There was a man whose name stopped being a name and became a title. For 2,000 years, the most powerful men on earth wanted to be called by his name: Caesar, Kaiser in Germany, Tsar in Russia, and he died with 23 stab wounds, many from the hands of friends. To understand him, you need to see his Rome. It was not an empire. It was a republic. For almost 450 years, Rome had had no king. The Romans hated the word king more than anything else in the world. Anyone who tried to become king died. Keep that in mind. In the year 100 BC, Gaius Julius Caesar was born. A patrician family, noble, but without great power or money. The Julii claimed descent from Venus, the goddess. A divine bloodline and an empty pocket. Ambition to spare, resources to lack. At 18 years old, he nearly died. The dictator Sulla, in a political bloodbath, marked the young Caesar for death. He fled, hid in the hills. Friends begged for his life, and Sulla relented, but warned that in that young man there were many Mariuses, many future tyrants. Sulla had seen correctly. Still young, Caesar was captured by pirates at sea. They demanded a ransom. Caesar laughed and told them to raise the price, because he was worth more than that. He spent days among them, joking that he would come back to crucify them. They found it funny. Once freed, he came back, hunted them down, and crucified every one of them. He never bluffed. Back in Rome, Caesar rose from the ground up, the people. He spent rivers of money he didn't have, staggering debts, on games, banquets, and generosity. He sank deep into debt, but the common people adored him. He was betting everything on a future that didn't exist yet. Standing before a statue of Alexander the Great, they say Caesar wept. Asked why, he answered, "At my age, Alexander had already conquered the world, and I have done nothing yet." His obsession had a mirror, and the mirror was a conqueror who had died at 32. But Caesar had a weapon his rivals didn't see: patience and calculation. He was elected Pontifex Maximus, Rome's highest priest. He wove alliances, marriages, favors. Behind the smile and the debts, piece by piece, he was building the machine that would carry him to the top. But alone, he was still too weak. His debts were so colossal that when he left Rome for a government post, creditors nearly stopped him from departing. Caesar needed money and he needed force. And he knew exactly where to find both. He forged a secret alliance with the two most powerful men in Rome. Pompey, the greatest general of the age, adored by the army, and Crassus, the richest man in the world. Alone, they canceled each other out. Together, the three of them could control the entire republic. History would call it the First Triumvirate. With Crassus's gold and Pompey's fame, Caesar was elected consul, Rome's highest office, in 59 BC. But a consulship lasted only 1 year. Caesar was already looking ahead to what came next: military command in Gaul, the wild lands to the north, where France stands today. There he would have an army all his own, and a war to conquer everything. Gaul was a patchwork of tribes the Romans called barbarians, feared warriors who, centuries earlier, had even sacked Rome itself. A vast territory beyond Roman law. To Caesar, it was no man's land waiting for an owner. For 8 years, Caesar waged war there. Campaign after campaign, siege after siege. Brilliant and brutal. He swept down on the tribes, turned them against each other, and crushed without mercy anyone who resisted. In Rome, the Senate watched, stunned, as the map of the Roman world grew. The numbers, by Caesar's own account, are staggering. More than 300 tribes subdued, 800 cities taken, about 1 million dead, another million sold into slavery. It was conquest and human catastrophe in equal measure. To terrify the Germanic tribes across the Rhine River, Caesar staged a display of pure power. He built a wooden bridge across the raging river in just 10 days. He crossed, showed that Rome could reach them any time it chose, and returned, burning the bridge behind him. The message was terror itself. He even crossed the sea and invaded Britain, the island shrouded in mist at the edge of the known world, the first Roman general ever to set foot there. Every one of these feats spread by word of mouth back in Rome. Caesar wasn't just conquering land. He was building a legend. Not everything came easy. In an ambush, the Nervii tribe nearly destroyed the Roman army. In the chaos, with his legions giving way, Caesar grabbed a shield, ran to the front line, and fought like a common soldier, shouting the names of his centurions. His presence turned the battle. He led from the blood, not from the rear. But the Gauls found a leader. His name was Vercingetorix, a young chieftain who did the impossible. He united the rival tribes into a single army. For the first time, Caesar wasn't facing scattered tribes, but an entire nation standing up, determined to drive Rome out. The final confrontation came at Alesia, 52 BC, Caesar's military masterpiece. Vercingetorix shut himself inside the hill fort. Caesar surrounded it with a complete wall. And then, from behind, a massive Gallic relief army arrived to rescue the besieged. Caesar was on the verge of being crushed. Then he did the unbelievable. He built a second wall, facing outward. His army ended up sandwiched between the besieged inside and the relief army outside, and defeated both at once. Besieger and besieged in the very same moment, and victorious. Alesia earned its place in the military textbooks forever. The next day, Vercingetorix rode out alone to Caesar, laid down his weapons at his feet, and surrendered to save his people. He would be taken to Rome in chains, paraded in a triumph, and then strangled in a dungeon. Gaul was now Roman, and would remain so for 1,500 years. And Caesar did something brilliant off the battlefield. He wrote the history of his own wars himself. The commentaries on the Gallic War, speaking of himself in the third person, in a cold, heroic account. It was pure propaganda, sent straight back to Rome, and it became one of the most read books of all time. While Caesar shone, the Pact of Three was falling apart. Crassus died in a disastrous war in the east. Two giants remained, and there was no room for both. Pompey, jealous and afraid of his rival's rising power, allied himself with the Senate, the old nobles who hated Caesar. The Senate played its final card. It ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome alone as an ordinary citizen. In other words, come back defenseless, to be prosecuted, ruined, perhaps killed. It was surrender disguised as a legal order. Caesar faced the choice of his life: obey and be finished for good, or march on Rome itself with his legions. The supreme crime: high treason, civil war. No general was allowed to enter Italy under arms. It was sacred law, one that no one had ever dared break. The boundary of that law was a small river in northern Italy, the Rubicon. On one side, the province, where he was allowed an army. On the other, Italy, where entering with troops meant declaring war on the state itself. In January of 49 BC, Caesar stopped at that narrow bank. He hesitated. He knew that crossing that thin stream of water would change the world, with no turning back. Then he moved forward and spoke the phrase that still echoes today: the die is cast. Alia iacta iesti, and he crossed the Rubicon with his troops. In that instant, the civil war began. The effect was electric. Rome panicked, and Pompey, the great general, did what no one expected. He did not fight in Italy. He fled by sea to Greece, taking half of Rome with him to gather his forces. Caesar entered the capital with barely a drop of blood spilled. But taking Rome was not the same as winning. Across the sea, Pompey was gathering a massive army, backed by the kings of the East and the cream of the Senate. Caesar, with fewer men, crossed over to Greece after him. Rome was now devouring its own flesh, Roman against Roman, legion against legion. The clash came at Pharsalus, 48 BC. Pompey had nearly twice the soldiers. Everyone bet on him. But Caesar knew his veterans, hardened in Gaul, and one decisive maneuver broke the enemy cavalry. Against all odds, Caesar won again. Pompey, the man who had once been the greatest in Rome, fled the field defeated and humiliated. He ran to the one place he thought was safe: Egypt, the wealthy kingdom on the banks of the Nile, where he expected the protection of an old ally. But Egypt calculated coldly. To please the victor, the young pharaoh's advisors murdered Pompey the moment he stepped ashore and presented his head to Caesar as a gift. They say Caesar wept. The rival of a lifetime, dead without honor. He had the assassins executed. And Caesar made a rare choice for his time: mercy. Instead of slaughtering his defeated enemies, he forgave them, returned their lands, their offices, their lives. They called it the clemency of Caesar. It was generosity, yes, but it was also strategy. And one day, it would be the cause of his death. It was in Egypt that Caesar met a young woman who would make history at his side, Cleopatra, a queen dethroned by her own brother. She needed Caesar. Legend says she had herself smuggled into his chambers, rolled up in a carpet, to reach the Roman alive. Caesar and Cleopatra became lovers and allies. With his legions, she reclaimed the throne of Egypt. With him, she had a son, Caesarion, the most powerful man in Rome and the last great queen of Egypt. We've already told her full story here on the channel. Back at war, Caesar crushed a rebel king in the east with a speed that became legend. His report of the victory had only 3 words, the most arrogant, most famous summary in military history: I came, I saw, I conquered. Veni, Vidi, Vici. In 45 BC, Caesar returned to Rome with no rival left alive. He was, in practice, master of the entire Roman world, from Britain to Egypt. No Roman had ever held so much power in one hand, and the 450-year-old republic held its breath. He used that power to reform everything. He granted citizenship to peoples of the provinces. He founded colonies to settle the poor and his veterans. He filled the Senate with new, loyal men. He reorganized debts and laws. Many ordinary people came to love him like they had loved no one before. And Caesar even fixed time itself. The Roman calendar was a mess, out of sync with the seasons. Caesar created a new one, based on the sun, with 365 days and a leap year, the Julian calendar. The world would use it for more than 1,600 years. It is, at its core, your calendar even today. And one of the months was named after him. The month of his birth, the one you still call July today, from Julius Caesar. Think about the size of that. One man's name, stamped onto the calendar of all humanity, 2,000 years after his death. But then Caesar crossed Rome's red line. He made himself dictator, not for 6 months, as old law allowed in emergencies, but dictator for life. Dictator forever. To the old noble's eyes, only the word was missing. This was already a king in everything but name. At a public festival, his ally Mark Antony offered Caesar a king's crown in front of the crowd. Caesar refused, and the people cheered the refusal. But many senators watched that scene and felt a chill. Today he refuses the crown. And tomorrow? Who would stop him from accepting it? Statues of Caesar everywhere, near divine honors. His image struck on coins, something once reserved only for gods and the illustrious dead. To a group of senators, this was no longer a man serving the republic. It was a man swallowing the entire republic alive. And there was one chilling detail. Caesar dismissed his personal bodyguard. Friends warned him of the danger. He answered that he would rather die once than live his whole life afraid of death. It was courage or fatal arrogance. Either way, he had just stripped off his own armor at the worst possible moment. Then the conspiracy was born. About 60 senators joined a secret plot. They called themselves the Liberators. They believed killing Caesar would save the Republic and Rome's freedom. At the front, 2 names: Cassius, the cold, resentful mastermind, and Brutus. And Brutus was the one that hurt. Marcus Junius Brutus was close to Caesar, protected by him, loved almost like a son. Caesar had spared Brutus's life in the Civil War and promoted him. Having Brutus among the daggers wasn't just politics. It was the most intimate betrayal a man can suffer. The signs piled up. A soothsayer warned Caesar in public, "Beware the Ides of March, the 15th day of that month." The night before, his wife Calpurnia dreamed of his death and begged him, in tears, not to leave the house. Caesar nearly gave in, but pride spoke louder. On the 15th of March, 44 BC, the Ides of March, Caesar went to the Senate. Without bodyguards. On his way in, he passed the soothsayer and joked, "The Ides of March have come, and nothing has happened." The man answered quietly, "Yes, Caesar, but they have not yet gone." Inside the chamber, the conspirators surrounded him, pretending to present a petition. Suddenly, the first dagger tore into his shoulder. Caesar reacted, tried to fight back. But then came the others, dozens of hands, dozens of blades. Senators in togas, stabbing one man, in a blind frenzy of blood and panic. And then, they say, Caesar saw Brutus among them, dagger in hand, closing in. That was when he stopped fighting. The words attributed to him have crossed the centuries. You too, Brutus? Facing betrayal from the man he loved like a son, Caesar covered his face with his toga and let himself die. 23 stab wounds. And a cruel irony in the setting. Caesar fell and died at the very feet of a statue, the statue of Pompey, the rival he had defeated and later wept for. The most powerful man in the world, sprawled on the Senate floor in his own blood, under the stone gaze of his dead enemy. The assassins raised their bloody daggers and ran into the streets shouting that Rome was free, that the Republic had been reborn. But what came was not celebration. The streets emptied, doors shut. The entire city held its breath in terror. No one applauded, because the conspirators had miscalculated the one thing that mattered most. They believed the people hated Caesar as much as they did, but the people loved him. They believed they were saving the Republic. The truth is the exact opposite. By driving in those daggers, they killed the very Republic they swore to defend. At the funeral, Mark Antony spoke over Caesar's body and raised, before the crowd, the torn toga soaked with stab wounds. The city erupted in fury. The people hunted the assassins through the streets with torches. Brutus and Cassius had to flee Rome to save their lives. Civil war was starting again, and a name emerged that no one took seriously. Caesar, with no legitimate son of his own, had adopted in his will an 18-year-old great-nephew, Octavian. Young, frail, of fragile health, underestimated by every power player. The exact same mistake they had already made once, with Caesar himself. Octavian hunted the assassins to the ends of the earth. Brutus and Cassius, cornered, ended up taking their own lives. Afterward, the young heir turned against his former ally Mark Antony, now joined with Cleopatra in Egypt. Another civil war. And once again, the world would be decided in a single battle. Octavian won. Antony and Cleopatra, defeated, took their own lives. And that frail young man became the absolute master of Rome. But he had learned from his uncle's death. He never called himself king, never dictator. He invented a new, softer title, and, without fanfare, became Rome's first emperor. The name he took was Augustus. Notice the final irony. The men who killed Caesar to stop a king only paved the way for something greater, an emperor with power Caesar never even dreamed of. The republic they claimed to be saving died for good that day. Rome would have emperors for the next 500 years. Caesar, dead, had won, and Caesar himself became a god. The Senate declared him divine, the divine Julius. During the games held in his honor, a comet crossed the sky over Rome for 7 straight nights. The people had no doubt. It was Caesar's soul, rising to the heavens to take his place among the gods. But his greatest legacy lies in the name itself. Every Roman emperor after him took the name Caesar, and the title crossed empires and languages. It became Kaiser, the emperor of Germany. It became Tsar, the emperor of Russia. For 2,000 years, supreme power carried the sound of one man's name. It's in your calendar, the Julian, the base of what you still use today. It's in the month of July, and it's in your everyday words. Crossing the Rubicon still means taking the point of no return. The die is cast is still said today. You too, Brutus, is still the cry of every betrayal. Think about the arc of that life. The poor, debt-ridden noble who wept before Alexander. The general who besieged and was besieged at the same time, at Alesia, and beat both. The man who stopped at the edge of a river and, in crossing it, brought down a centuries-old republic. He wanted absolute power, and he got it, for a short time. And he paid with 23 stab wounds, many from hands he had once shaken as a friend's. But perhaps no dead man in history has won as much as he did, because the world still counts its days by his calendar. The mercy he showed his enemies, sparing Brutus, sparing Cassius, was exactly what allowed those same men to kill him. Had Caesar been as cruel as Sulla, he would have lived. It was his own generosity that armed the daggers that killed him. Perhaps that's the bitterest lesson of his story. And there remains the great question Rome never answered. Was Caesar a tyrant who killed freedom? Or a genius who merely hastened the end of a republic already rotten and ungovernable? 2,000 years later, historians still argue. Perhaps he was both. What is certain is that before him, Rome was a republic of consuls. After him, it was an empire of Caesars. He is the hinge on which the history of the ancient world turns. On one side, the old world. On the other, the world he created by dying. The statue of Pompey, at whose feet he fell, vanished with time. The walls of Alesia became open fields. The Senate that killed him crumbled to ruin. But the name Caesar remains alive, on the lips of billions, every single July, in every language that ever had an emperor. So who was Julius Caesar? The boy Sulla wanted dead. The prisoner who crucified his own pirates. The conqueror of Gaul. The man who crossed the Rubicon. Cleopatra's lover. The dictator. The god. And the betrayed, who became the word for power for everyone who came after. He died believing he would become king. He didn't. He became something far greater. He became the very name of power, forever. And it all ended, and began, on a March morning, with a soothsayer, a torn toga, and a friend with a dagger in hand. If this story gripped you, do one thing for me. Comment below on what struck you most: the double wall at Alesia, the moment he crossed the Rubicon, or you too, Brutus, on the Senate floor. And if you love history told the way it deserves to be told, big, real, and impossible to forget, subscribe to World and Stories. Because the world is full of stories just like this one, of men who became legends, waiting to be told. A poor nobleman dreamed of being like Alexander. He crossed a river, brought down a republic, and died betrayed by a son in all but blood. And 2,000 years later, the world still calls its kings by his name, and still counts its days by the calendar he created. Until the next story.